This story goes back almost 15,000 years, when there were no hospitals, no doctors, no pharmacies. When people got hurt, fell ill, or went into labor, their only hope was nature and the hard-earned experience of a few knowledgeable people. This is the story of a woman named Mira, whose sharp observation skills laid the foundation of her tribe's entire system of medicine. In Mira's tribe, illness always meant an uncertain battle. When fever struck, people simply waited. Either they would recover or they would die. When wounds occurred, there was no set method of cleaning them, so even small injuries often turned into fatal infections. Since childhood, Mira had watched her grandmother, whom everyone called Old Kesa, care for the sick. Kesa knew which leaves reduced fever, which roots eased pain, but this knowledge existed nowhere in writing. It passed only by word of mouth, generation after generation, shaped by trial and error. When Mira was a teenager, her younger brother stumbled on a rock while hunting and suffered a deep wound to his leg. The bleeding wouldn't stop, and he cried out in pain. Terrified, Mira ran to find Kesa. Kesa first washed the wound with clean water, then applied the sap of a specific plant onto it. This plant's sap helps the blood clot, she explained. Then she wrapped the wound tightly with clean hide, protecting it from air and dirt. Mira watched in amazement as her brother's wound began healing within days. This event left a deep impression on her. With knowledge, with observation, even the most terrifying situations could be survived. From that day on, Mira became Kesa's constant shadow. She began memorizing the use of every plant, every root, every leaf. Kesa taught her which tree bark reduced fever, something scientists would later discover contained a compound that became the basis for modern aspirin. She learned which leaf, chewed, eased stomach pain, and which honey applied to a wound prevented infection. Mira learned that every remedy had a precise dosage. Too much could turn poisonous, too little wouldn't work at all. Understanding this balance was the product of years of accumulated experience. Kesa warned her, always use a small amount first, watch how the body responds, then increase if needed. One day, a hunter from the tribe named Torv fell from a tree while hunting and broke his arm. The bone had broken so badly that his arm bent at an unnatural angle. Torv was nearly fainting from the pain. Kesa called Mira to help. The bone needs to be set straight, or it will heal wrong and Torv will be crippled for life. This was a difficult, terrifying process. Kesa showed Mira how to carefully pull the bone back into position, and in that moment, Torv's agonized scream stayed etched in Mira's memory. After setting the bone, they bound the arm firmly with straight pieces of wood, keeping it still so the bone could heal correctly. This method, what we today call a splint, Kesa had learned from her own grandmother. Mira's most frightening experience came when her own friend, Luna, was about to give birth. Labor pains began in the evening, but even deep into the night, the baby hadn't come. Luna was growing exhausted, and fear was visible on her face. Kesa and Mira stayed by Luna's side all night long. Kesa knew how to position Luna to ease the birth, how to apply pressure to her back to relieve pain. Mira noticed that Kesa's voice always stayed calm, even in the most difficult moments, because she knew that if Luna felt fear, her body would suffer even more. Deep in the night, finally, the baby was born. But a new problem arose. The baby wasn't breathing at first. Kesa quickly cleared fluid from the baby's mouth, then gently patted its back. For a few seconds, everyone froze in silence. Then the baby cried. That cry was the most beautiful sound in the world. The hardest battle was against infection, something they didn't fully understand at the time. They only knew that yellow fluid coming from a wound, along with fever, meant danger. Kesa taught Mira the skill of recognizing the difference between a wound staying clean and one turning bad. Once, a child's wound became infected, and the child shook with fever. Kesa boiled the leaves of a specific plant and used that water to wash the wound repeatedly, several times a day. She also used a special type of soil found in their region, which had natural antiseptic properties, though no one understood why it worked at the time. After 3 days, the fever began to break. Mira understood that medicine wasn't just about applying a single remedy. It meant patient, repeated care, careful observation, and changing methods when needed. One day, a young hunter mistakenly ate a poisonous plant, believing it was safe to eat. Within moments, he began vomiting, his body shaking uncontrollably. Kesa recognized immediately what had happened, since she had seen these symptoms before. She quickly crushed a specific root and had him eat it, which induced vomiting, so the poison would leave his body before being absorbed further. Afterward, he was given plenty of water to drink. The young hunter recovered, but from this event, Mira learned an important lesson. Knowing which plants were poisonous and which were safe was a matter of life and death. From then on, Mira wanted to learn about every new plant, not just as medicine, but as potential danger. She built a mental list, which ones were safe, which were dangerous, and which were beneficial in the right dose, but harmful in excess. Years passed, Kesa grew old, and Mira slowly began taking on the role of the tribe's chief healer. One day, Kesa herself fell ill, weakened by old age. Mira cared for her greatest teacher in her final days, but this time, she understood that some illnesses couldn't be cured by any remedy, only eased with comfort. Before she died, Kesa took Mira's hand and said, "What you've learned isn't just for you, it has to be passed on to the next generation." Mira held on to these words deeply. From then on, Mira began teaching the younger generation herself, exactly as Kesa had taught her. She also added new knowledge from her own experience: which season made which plant most effective, how to preserve dried herbs so they could be used even in winter, how to diagnose illness by observing different symptoms. She taught the young ones an important principle. A healer's job wasn't just knowing remedies, but staying calm, reassuring the patient, and observing patiently. "If your hands shake, your patient will feel afraid too," she would say, just as Kesa had once told her. Today, thousands of years later, modern medicine has given us hospitals, antibiotics, surgery, vaccines, technologies far beyond anything Mira could have imagined. But when scientists study ancient herbal medicine, they're often amazed to find that many of these ancient remedies had real scientific basis. Like willow bark, which later led to the creation of aspirin. Countless people like Mira and Kesa, generation after generation, built this knowledge through nothing but careful observation, patience, and trial and error, knowledge that kept humanity alive for thousands of years, without a single hospital or medical degree. Their oral tradition, this knowledge passed hand to hand across generations, remains one of the true foundations of today's modern medicine.